I'm Lynn, and my background is wellness coaching. I take my final test on Friday, and so I'll have my certification in hand. Consulting and education. My background is I've been doing cardiac rehab, wellness coordinating for different companies. I teach classes, I do sports nutrition. So I've been doing a lot, and I enjoy just sharing my knowledge and helping people get healthier and improve their diet. So today we're going to talk about how we can restore our health. As we know, and this is a similar slide that you saw last time, but nutrition, and I'm going to tell you three things. Nutrition, exercise, and stress have the biggest impact on our health. But nutrition is one thing that we focus a lot on because it can influence the other two factors a lot. It influences our weight, our vitality, our energy, our performance, and that's what I'm working a lot with these young athletes, because we really can see an improvement in their performance if they're just eating right and eating enough and eating at the right time. Our ability to handle stress. Hey, Rick, go ahead and grab some handouts right there, and I've got some samples down there as well. And sign in. And also our risk of diseases. Now, when we take a look at America's health, it is getting scarier kind of by the day. But we know that obesity is on the rise, and 67% of us are overweight and 33 of those are obese. But that obesity disease influences the next four: metabolic syndrome, diabetes, cancer, and heart disease. Metabolic syndrome is something that we're going to talk a little bit more about later. It is described by an increase in our waist circumference, our blood pressure, our triglycerides, our glucose intolerance, and a lower HDL. And metabolic syndrome directly leads to diabetes. If metabolic syndrome goes unchecked, those individuals will have diabetes within a matter of time. And the hardest part about diabetes is, we have a good portion that has it, but there is a huge portion that has not been diagnosed yet. And so for every one person that has diabetes, there are 3 more out there that will have diabetes. Cancer. And again, we know that there's a lot of things related to our stress, our diet, and our exercise that influences our rate of cancer. And we'll talk about cancer-preventing foods and also some stress-preventing things that can help reduce that cancer. Because in Idaho, it's the #1 killer. In the nation, I think it's #2, and heart disease is #1, but in Idaho it is. And then heart disease, of course, metabolic syndrome and diabetes both contribute to that. Inflammatory diseases like arthritis are on the rise, as well as our autoimmune diseases. Talk a little bit about stress impact. How many of you guys ever feel under stress? Today I was running around, I go, holy cow, I gotta go do some deep breathing. But what happens in our body that creates stress? And I used to think about this in college because I ran in such a high stress mode because I had so much going on. And I think about probably all the damage I was doing to my body during that time, just because you get in that mode and that's how you operate the best. You think you do, at least. But what happens is our hypothalamus, which is in the brain, sets off an alarm system, and it can be anything from a startle to having too much to do, to feeling maybe your needs aren't met, or stress at work, project, that type of thing. And it prompts those adrenal glands, which I'll show you what they look like, at the top of our kidneys to release these hormones. And you probably have all heard of adrenal burnout or adrenal fatigue. That's what they're talking about, is these adrenal glands have worked overtime producing these hormones, and they really do become fatigued. They actually become turned on all the time. But the adrenal gland releases adrenaline and cortisol. And adrenaline is the hormone that's responsible for increasing our heart rate, getting our breathing going, our blood pressure. And cortisol is kind of that nasty one. It's got a great purpose, but when it's going over time, it creates havoc in our body. And that's the one that releases the blood sugar. And that's why we know that people who are at higher risk for metabolic syndrome and stress, if you look at, or diabetes, if you look at their lifestyle, they're usually that high stress, type people. It enhances our brain to use that glucose so that we become ready to go. You know, we can think, we can react, and it also reduces the substance, repairs it, or releases the substance that repairs the tissue. So if you got stabbed in that fight, what's going to happen? Our body is going to send clotting factors. So when we're under stress, our body releases those clotting factors, and that often is what's responsible too for a heart attack when we're under stress. It alters our immune system. It basically shuts down that immune system. It's not near as important as everything else going on in our body at that time. And the same with our digestive and reproductive system. Depresses or suppresses that and reduces our growth process. So what happens when that system gets stuck in the on switch for a long period of time? We probably know a few people that that's happened to. Well, we have long-term, and there's a picture of our little adrenal glands so you can see where they sit there. And right there on top of the kidneys, so you know it's a quick hormone release right to the blood flow, because those are your, probably your inferior vena cava and your, I can't remember the other one's name, but it's a main artery. But it creates a variety of health issues. One, our immune system, and we were talking about her daughter that's sick all the time. I don't know if stress is to play in that, but stress is one thing. You know, if you watch people in your office or who you might work with or friends or something, and they're more likely to get sick, they probably don't handle stress as well. Also, heart conditions. There is a lot of heart disease that's related to stress because it creates high blood pressure. We see abnormal heartbeats like arrhythmias with high stress, blood clots, atherosclerosis, and it also increases our risk of heart attack because of the clotting. Stomach, this is a big one too. If we're under a lot of stress, our stomach takes a huge toll. And probably one of the highest medications prescribed is for esophageal reflux disease, GERD. And we know that our poor diet and our inactivity and stress is probably the things that create that. Peptic ulcer disease, irritable bowel, and ulcer colitis. Our reproductive organs. People don't think about this too, but we look at the infertility rate in our country, and that's one of the main reasons is because of high stress. We also see problems during pregnancy, menstrual issues, and another big one right here is cancer. And they're really linking high stress right now to cancer because what happens is all cells end up with a little bit of a mutation, you know, during time because we get exposed to pollutants, carcinogens, whatever it might be. But when we're under stress, our immune system is not ready to repair those little mutations. And so those mutations become bigger and affect our DNA, and that's when cancer starts. People who have COPD or pulmonary disease, it gets worse with stress. Eczema and acne do as well, and then back and neck problems. How many of you guys have had back and neck pain, probably due to stress? I know I had to go in and get some serious massages this year because you get that tightness in those muscles, and then oftentimes they don't release with that stress. Cortisol. Does anybody know what we think that some of the bad effects of cortisol on our body? This is one that's gotten a lot of press lately too. For assisting in our weight issue. One of them, though, the big one, too much cortisol creates depression. And that's what we've seen with our busy, crazy society, our high cholesterol, and our weight gain, especially around the midsection, because when our bodies create or release cortisol, this is where we want to put on our pounds, is right through the midsection. It also reduces our metabolism, so we don't burn as many calories. We have more hunger cravings. And we also see that inflammation. Stress creates inflammation in our body, and inflammation creates disease. That cancer, heart disease, autoimmune, diabetes, all of those things. It also damages the cells in our brain, so we don't think as well. It actually, when kids are under stress, it actually decreases their learning ability. So that's why it's really unfortunate in our schools that these poor little guys are running around with a lot of stress because it's really reducing their learning environment and ability. Okay, so what can we do to fight that stress? First is having a great network of friends and family. And if you can surround yourself with those people who can help you and you can talk to, you seem to handle stress a lot better. Note, though, that if you're lonely or isolated, those effects of stress are even worse. If you have control in the situation, all of us hate to be not in control. And if we don't have control of the situation, that stress seems to impact us more. But if we are able to have a little bit of control, we do better. Our attitude is huge. If we are more positive and we have a sense of humor and we can look forward and kind of see the silver lining, we do better. Those people that think that there's a higher power and believe in a higher purpose do better. And if we know how to do deep breathing, maybe some meditation, some prayer, those type of things, it helps deal with our emotions. We do better with stress. And then knowing about a situation and what to expect helps a lot in dealing with stress. Now, I gave you guys a stress worksheet, and so I was just going to have you take a couple minutes here. And I think there's, I think it goes 15 to 100 as far as stress. It's right here. Stress events go. Some pens and stuff. Just kind of glance through there if you want to circle the numbers that might affect you, and just kind of take a look at where you are on that whole stress scale. I think when we do that, it really helps us to understand the impact of stress on our life. Then you have to use your adding. Guys, good on you. Thanks for coming. Congratulations on that softball win.
Oh, thank you. We just see you guys play at state.
Here's some handouts for you. Something different. This is kind of a fun little one because we can talk about the back of this one first. Sure. Take it home to your mom. Oh yeah, and we'll get to taste those in a little while. There's some quinoa there if you want to try some. Made it today. Nobody's gotten sick yet.
I told Haley not to bring her Big Mac in.
Thank you. We'll talk about that a little bit. Oh dear. Well, Haley was one of my basketball players for, holy cow, 6 years? Yeah, so a long time. All right, how did we do on our stress survey? Were you surprised at your stress level? How'd you do, Rick?
110.
110? That wasn't too bad then. I'll have to look at the totals. Yeah, how about,
105, and that did surprise me.
you thought you were less stressed
No,
or more stressed?
I guess I hadn't ever thought about it much.
Well, that works. Anybody else?
105, that was actually less than I thought.
Okay. You know, there's a whole variety of these little surveys out there, and you can find ones you probably score higher on or lower on, just depending on what survey you might take. But sometimes it does make you go, oh yeah, that is a stress in my life, and or maybe it impacts me more than I thought I did. So I think it's a good thing, and if you just type in, Google stress surveys, you can learn a lot, and there's a lot of online ones you can do too. Let's talk a little bit about building the foundation, and this is out of Chris Johnson's book, On Target Living. And his philosophy is that you have, at the bottom of your foundation, you have rest and recovery, nutrition, and exercise. And if you don't have those 3 building blocks, you don't have your balance, energy, and vitality. And that's really what we are going to be shooting for, is energy, vitality, and good health. So let's talk a little bit about rest and recovery. How many of you guys get 8 hours of sleep at night? Okay, our society is typically around 6, is what the average is. And that really isn't enough for us to let our bodies heal, to reduce that stress, and to recover. How many of you take vacations? I do. Okay, vacations are really important, especially for our rest, recovery, and vitality, because we need to unplug, we need to get away, we need to have that time to charge our batteries, and if we don't, we get in that burnout cycle, and it's really tough to keep getting ourselves up every day and going through the same thing, and we just don't have that energy that we need. A vacation is one of the best things that we can do for ourselves. Sleep. If you have issues sleeping, Chris has a whole chapter on things that you can do to help you rest better and sleep better. But again, it's making that conscious effort to go to bed early, to have a similar nighttime routine. We will talk a lot more about the nutrition one. I'm going to leave that one alone for the moment. And then exercise. And if we turn your target over, and I love his, I use his food target all the time, but now he's got the rest and rejuvenation and the exercise target. And so as we look at it, again, it's the same philosophy. You go from the outside, which is poor. We don't want to be doing that, and we want to be moving toward the inside. Well, for him, poor would be hanging your clothes on your exercise equipment, but you want to be getting to where you're doing what we call our stretching, our aerobic type exercise, and our strengthening most days of the week. So for him, good would be even, walking while you're playing golf, doing your foundation exercises, and he has a whole routine on his website that you can go in and do, and it's like 12 minutes. It's really quite easy, and they're easy to do exercises. Anybody can do it. Parking your car further, taking the stairs, doing that type of thing really helps with your exercise. And again, rest and rejuvenation. It is amazing, especially when we talk about stress and reducing stress, if you can do some of those positive activities, how much better you will feel. Okay, we'll talk next a little bit about exercise. Some of you probably already have a great routine. Some of you might not have any routine yet. But what I know the American College of Sports Medicine guidelines are that you exercise, do some sort of physical activity 30 minutes a day. You can break that up into segments. You can do 3 10-minute activities, 2 15, whatever works for you. But try to get your body out and moving. Your resistance and strength training is so important because strength training has so many benefits, everything from helping reduce disease to increasing our muscle mass, our metabolism, just our overall strength, reducing our incidence of back pain, and stretching. That's also very important. And stretching sometimes gets left to the side. But the overall benefits of exercise improves and reduces depression, improves our mood, reduces depression, combats those diseases we talked about, diabetes, cancer, heart disease, metabolic syndrome, boosts our energy, and helps relieve the effects of stress that we just talked about, improves learning, self-esteem, helps us manage our weight, and helps us sleep better. Okay, we're going to talk now about the fun foods and those effects on stress. Fresh whole foods. Who can list off about 5 really good foods that would be for helping us to provide good nutrients that might fight stress? Any ideas?
Spinach.
Spinach, that's a good one.
Kale.
Kale.
Broccoli.
Broccoli. How about berries? Berries. How about tea? Yep. Okay, they kind of come in all sorts of sizes, colors, tastes, the whole bit. But there's a lot of great antioxidants in the food we eat. Well, we got to just pick those foods instead of our Big Mac. So, because they don't have any antioxidants. So it's important that we take a look at that and why those are important. And we know that if we don't get enough of these foods, that's when disease occurs. We also need fatty acids, which we'll talk about in our oils, our vitamins, our minerals, fiber, protein, and complex carbohydrates. So there's a bunch of different ones. Are you able to see that? carrots and peppers and oranges and strawberries and peas and grapes and all of that. So here are some superfoods to eat. We'll talk a little bit about this. Grapes, blue, purple, and red grapes are probably the highest in antioxidants, and they fight heart disease and cancer. Blueberries would be, blueberries, huckleberries, blackberries are our next ones. And I'm going to show you a little dish with our smoothies. Those decrease our inflammation, and again, remember, inflammation is the basis of all diseases. Nuts, raspberries and strawberries also do. Nuts have healthy fats, good fiber, also some minerals that we need. Dark green vegetables, that was our kale, our spinach, our cabbage, broccoli, all those type of things. Have a lot of antioxidants. Sweet potatoes and orange vegetables. How many of you tried sweet potato fries? How do you like them?
They're good.
They're awesome. I think they're much better than regular French fries. They're more flavorful, and they're a whole lot healthier. So if you can transition and make sweet potato fries instead of French fries, you're getting some great vitamin A and a couple other antioxidants as well. Tea. How many of you drink tea instead of coffee or drink tea? Good. Tea is probably one of the best antioxidants that we can drink. Green tea, but there's also many flavored teas. Black tea even has a lot of antioxidants. Our oolong tea helps with weight loss. Whole grains. Whole grains are important for many vitamins and minerals, but especially fiber. We're very low in fiber in our diet, and whole grains help provide that. Beans and lentils. How many of you eat beans and lentils? Good. I made a soup this weekend. It was so easy. I mean, I took ground turkey, tomato juice, onion, and then I put in barley, lentils, some dried peas, and then a whole bunch of vegetables like carrots and celery and garlic. I said onions, and whatever you want to throw in. If you want to throw in beans or whatever, it's a great easy soup. It takes about 2 hours cooking. Fish. How many times are you supposed to eat fish a week? 2, well, yeah, the more the better, but how many of you do eat fish 2 to 3 times a week? Yeah, it's a tough one. And I'll show you, I use a fish oil every day for my whole family. And it's an omega-3, and it's really the only, I mean, we eat fish maybe once every 2 weeks, I'll be honest, just because it's expensive. It's not easy to get. You know, you have to either live in Seattle or Alaska or go to Costco all the time. But fish is really important in our diet, and we don't get those omega-3s from very many other foods, so fish is really important. Quinoa, the little dish that I just fixed, quinoa is a complete protein, so you don't really need a meat dish with that. It's a complete grain protein, and then I use olive oil, which is a good fat, and then I use my vegetables like carrots and peppers and onions and cucumber and all of that. So it's a great way of getting your complete protein and a lot of your good vegetables. Eggs. How many of you eat eggs? Good. Okay. And eggs for a while had gotten a bad name because of the cholesterol, but actually what we're finding, it's a good source of protein. It really is not very high in calories. You know, if you limit your yolks too, it helps. If you have a cholesterol problem, if you don't worry about it. And it provides a lot of those, I think it provides 12 vitamins and minerals. So eggs are a really important thing, and if you can start your day with an egg plus some carbohydrates, your blood sugar is going to be a lot more stable. Low-fat yogurt, that's another good one. We often don't get enough calcium and vitamin D in our diet, and this is one way to help with that. And cinnamon and turmeric. How many of you use turmeric in your cooking? And I don't use it near enough. I should probably take a turmeric supplement. But anyway, it is one of the supplements that actually prevents cancer. So if you are worried about cancer, you know, in your life, I would suggest using some turmeric or take a look at a supplement. Okay, here's some ways we can add fruits and vegetables to our diet. Because sometimes people tell me, I just really have a hard time getting more than 2 servings a day. How many of you get 5 to 7? How many of you get 2 to 3? 1 or 2? Okay, and this is really where we can, If we add more fruits and vegetables to our diet, we really protect ourselves from disease, especially cancer and diabetes. But start out with a berry smoothie, and we'll make that here when we're done. I know that when I do my berry smoothies, and I showed in my last class last time how I juice cabbage and spinach and carrots and apples and orange and berry. You can put in, lemon and a variety of other things. And then I pour it into ice cubes. And then I take those ice cubes and I put them in my morning smoothie. So I put in 1 ice cube for every serving I make. So we get probably 2 servings of fruits and vegetables in the morning. And on that recipe, I call it my magic ice cubes. It's that midsection. And it really is easy to do. But carrots and celery, cucumber slices, if you make lunches for yourself or your kids, using dried craisins and almonds is another great snack. And I really try to do this with my family is kind of rotate broccoli, asparagus. Asparagus is tough. It's not in season very long, but when it is, it's great. Beets and artichokes. And my youngest loves artichokes. So if I could do that once a week, she'd be happy. So I'd really try to rotate and use about 3 or 4 of those a week in some fashion. Salads, I use a variety of salads and try to use those probably 2 or 3 times a week. A cabbage salad, for instance, I use one, and I think I have a recipe if you're interested, that has cabbage, apples, carrots, cabbage, apples, carrots, I think, and it has a little light dressing with some, the little seeds, poppy seeds. Yeah, and it's really quite tasty. So if you're interested, I've got some of those I can pull out and share. Soups, you can, fruit salads, baked apples, baked grapefruit, that's what we use for dessert a lot of times. Juicing that I talked about, the quinoa, peppers, carrots, and cauliflower. I also try to use these for snacks or like an appetizer before dinner. So that gave you, whoops, I could go back, but that gave you at least some, ideas of getting your 5 servings a day, didn't it? Think you can go home and try some of that? All right, we'll take a quick break here and we'll do the smoothie before we go to the Target. All right. Haley, you want to be my assistant cook? How about I'll let you put all this stuff in and I'll measure it out. Does that sound good? I'll let you come back here.
My hands are clean, but
Your hands are, well, I'll just put it all in. Here, I'll let you just dump those in. I'll measure out.
What actually constitutes a serving?
That's a good question. For most vegetables, like a salad would be 1 cup. Let's say broccoli, berries, that type of thing would be half a cup. A small apple is a serving, a small orange is a serving, a smaller banana would be a serving.
Well, I do better than I thought I did.
See, really if you think about how many servings you eat. But that's why I try to always start our breakfast with 1 to 2 servings. Because if I do that, I know I can probably get 5 servings in for my family a day. All right. I'll put this in here. Actually, why don't you pour this into that for me? I'll let you do that. You can pour it over that if you worry about spilling it too. What's your mom's favorite dinner that she makes?
I have no clue.
It was funny when I used to talk to your uncle, he would tell me bologna sandwiches.
That's probably true.
Yeah,
Elevator top, I think.
yeah, that's probably good. Yeah, just go ahead and pour it in. Yep.
Probably a stir fry.
Stir fry. There you go.
She makes,
Makes great stir fry because she's Filipino, so she probably, yeah, I bet she makes a great stir fry. Probably have to come take lessons. All right, so did I put 2 of those in? All right, and then I put in some, I usually put in about 3 or 4 scoops of protein powder, usually a scoop per serving. So I'll just kind of pretend I'm making about 2 servings here. I put in about 1.5 cups to 2 cups of berries, 2 cups of yogurt, and I use the fat-free, what's this one? The plain yogurt, and I try to use the ones that have no hormones, just because I worry about that, especially with our milk supply. So you can get Nancy's here as well. And then I add in, you can use a mixture of fruit juice and water. And I use 100% juice, and I just add in, maybe a cup, just enough to make sure it's covered. And then I add in some type of fish oil or cod liver oil, and nobody tastes it. It's a great way of getting that good fat in, and nobody even knows it. And I also added flax meal, and that's another good omega-3, and it's very healthy, gives extra fiber. And now I have to just unplug my computer. Yes. And I'll let Haley serve you guys. I showed you my Ninja last class. It's a great little blender, not quite as expensive as the Vitamixes. Let me see. Okay, let's see what we got here. All right.
Then how many times do you use your blender in a week or a day?
Usually about twice a day. And it's been a great buy, because I do this every morning for breakfast, and like tonight, when I didn't have time for dinner, that's what I made for dinner.
Is that your breakfast then?
Yeah, and oftentimes I'll add like a piece of whole grain toast, sometimes an egg.
Into that?
No. Separate dish.
Okay.
Well, they would taste a little funny. But just, I know that with this, I've given myself a good serving of fruits and vegetables if I add in my magic ice cubes too. And serving of calcium, extra protein with the protein powder, my healthy fats. So I know it's a good balanced breakfast, and it's one that also will stabilize your blood sugar a little bit, especially if you add, even an egg or some, high fiber bread or cereal. And then we can give some to the cow. Here, here. I'll just pour it.
Okay.
Yeah. So what do you think? Pretty good?
Pretty good,
Yeah. My kids love it, and even my pickiest eater will say, what do you want for breakfast? A smoothie. And so I just get in the habit of making it, and like I said, then I know everybody starts with at least some good nutrition in the morning. I've got a little extra left if anybody wants any extra. So,
Do they
go ahead.
eat after they work out too? I mean, is that-
Yes, those would be great after you work out, especially with the protein powder in it. And actually the fruit juice for right after you work out will really help with the absorption of the carbohydrates into the muscle to store that glycogen. So yes, it would be a great post-workout food. And we use a post-workout recovery drink that's got both protein and carbohydrates, and then oftentimes I'll put milk and a banana in there too, just to help with that. But this type of thing would be perfect. So anyway, yeah, helps that performance. Let's take a look real quick at the target. Some of you have already seen the target, and I just think the more we can think about eating from the target, the healthier we're going to be. And oftentimes, if you first time you've seen it, you probably eat a few things, maybe quite a few things, from the outside of the target. And we just need to focus on trying to move inward. There are some kind of surprises when you take a look at it. And disappointments, people go, oh man, beer is on the outside of the target. I'm so bummed. But remember, it's an 80-20 rule. You know, eat 80% more to the inside, 20% to the outside. Most of your organic whole foods are to the inside, less processed. Good fats. You noticed your cod liver oil, which is what I used in the smoothies. It's in the blue-green zone right in the middle. I also use the agave nectar for a sweetener. Yes.
Why are crackers unhealthy?
Well, it depends on the type of cracker. You kind of have A to Z when you look at crackers. Ritz crackers, for instance, they have a lot of trans fats, simple carbohydrates. But then if you took a rye crisp, something that has 3 or 4 grams of fiber, whole grain, that type of thing, is a much better choice. So if you look at wheat thins, not wheat thins, yes, wheat thins, the little squares, those only, I think, have 3 ingredients. And so and they're made from whole grain. So they're a better choice than, let's say, is it Triscuits? No. Triscuits are the whole grain. Wheat thins are the ones that aren't as good. Yeah. Whoops. So what they're trying to do is to get you to reduce the amount of, processed, trans fat, simple carbohydrate foods, and eat more better quality foods. Any other questions on that? We talk a little bit about oatmeal too. Rolled oats versus steel cut oats. Steel cut oats have a little bit more fiber. When you look at how quickly they are digested and absorbed, they take a little bit longer. So those are going to be a better choice. Okay, the next thing I'm going to talk about, and it kind of leads into what Haley was talking about, is glycemic load. And for people who are trying to lose weight or trying to prevent diabetes, or if they have, already kind of some insulin resistant, glycemic load is a thing to concentrate on, and you can really see some good results. Glycemic index is the amount, it's how quickly that carbohydrate will be digested and absorbed in your body. And so glycemic load just takes into account the serving size with that glycemic index. But if you decrease the glycemic load, there is less insulin that's actually released. Unless, of course, you're an athlete, and we can talk about that, but there are times when you guys need the higher glycemic index or glycemic load foods because you want quick absorption of carbohydrates into your muscle post-exercise. Insulin is a hormone that promotes obesity. And that's why, remember we talked about when insulin is released, well actually we talked about cortisol triggers insulin, and then insulin helps store that fat around our midsection. And insulin resistance equals metabolic syndrome. And then once we have metabolic syndrome, then we see diabetes come into play as well. And 22% of the population can't handle starch or sugar in the diet without producing excess insulin. And here's kind of the interesting one, is our genetics is what makes us more prone to insulin insensitivity. And it's funny, when you look at a family and you go, this child looks like this parent, and this child looks like this parent, and their metabolism is very similar too. Well, I see that in my family. My one youngest daughter has more of a body like I do, and my oldest daughter has more like my husband's. And Don, some of you saw the previous before and after pictures of him in my other presentation, but he's lost like 23 pounds, or was it 32 pounds? Anyway, a lot. And he had insulin insensitivity, which meant his blood sugars were running pretty high. Well, when we started him on a decreased carbohydrate diet and a higher fiber and more protein, his blood sugars came down. And my daughter Brianna is the same way. And that's why her body wants to store fat like his does. It's because they're genetically made up the same. So I've been watching her blood sugars as well. And so we really are concentrating now on this glycemic load so that we can help reduce those blood sugars before it becomes a problem. So you're going to say, okay, so what does that really mean? Okay, so here's some different foods in the carbohydrate zone. Our high glycemic ones over here, and you probably have some favorites, maybe pancakes or a bagel. I don't know how many of you eat white bread. You know, rice, a very ripe banana. Banana that's really green has a low glycemic index. One that is very ripe, that's probably almost turning brown, is very high. Baked potatoes as well. And what these all have in common is they're fairly high in starch. So what happens in our body when we eat these is it releases a lot of insulin. And when we release a lot of insulin, we want to store those carbohydrates, oftentimes as fat, unless we're an athlete, where we store it as glycogen in the muscle because we've used all that. The rest of us, we don't work hard enough usually to burn out all of our glycemic store like athletes do. And that's why oftentimes we'll suggest to them after exercise, these are the foods that they eat. But the rest of us, who aren't working as hard as they are, need to stick with the lower glycemic index foods. And you'll notice a couple things that they all have in common. They're all very high fiber foods. Apples and oranges, they're actually lower glycemic as far as fruit goes. Watermelon is really high because it has a lot of sugar. It's easily, you know, that sugar triggers again that insulin response. Milk is fairly low, which you might be surprised. Grapes, pasta, carrots, and even yogurt. Those are lower glycemic index foods. So when you're looking for carbohydrates and you're worried about your weight or worried about diabetes or metabolic syndrome, use the lower glycemic ones. Make sense? Any questions? That whole thing gets a little confusing, but if you just kind of think of, I have taken out potatoes, rice, and a lot of bread out of our diet. And it has helped a lot because it just reduces the amount of starch that they're eating so we don't get that big insulin response. Does that kind of make sense? Yeah. All right. So now we get to talk about the worst foods for our health. Refined carbohydrates. We see our pop and our candy and our those type of things. Probably ice cream. It was funny, I was doing a coaching thing the other day and the gal goes, we were brainstorming on breakfast ideas. She goes, yeah, a friend of mine feeds her kids ice cream sandwiches for breakfast. And I'm like, oh. I'm trying not to have a big reaction on that one. But those type of things, high refined carbohydrates, anytime really do more damage in our body and they don't provide any nutrients. So we really need to stay away from those. Trans fats the same way. When we look at, you know, lunch meats and crackers and cookies and those type of things, soda pop, fast foods. There are good choices when we eat fast foods, but there are a lot of bad choices too. And the key is to try to find the better choices when we're eating out. And how many of you watched the little guy who went to, I think it was Tennessee, and went into the schools? Jamie Oliver.
Jamie Oliver.
Yes. And one thing, when he went to that one lady's house, he goes, look around, look at all your food. It's all brown. Everything's brown. It was either fried, coated, breaded, you know, but brown. So really try to stay away from brown type foods. And here's some others. Sliders. Actually, I know those look great, but they're nutritionally one of the worst. Microwave popcorn. You know, there's some that are lower in fat, but really it's bad because of all those little chemicals that come off the bag when it's microwaving. So instead, we got one of the old-fashioned popcorn poppers, I think from Cabela's. Put it on the burner, you throw in some coconut oil, your popcorn, and away you go. And it's quick, it's easy, and it's much healthier. Deep dish pizzas, and they say if you're going to eat a pizza, order thin crust, and if you even have a regular crust pizza, tear off the outside part of it and just eat the middle part, and you'll decrease your carbohydrates by probably about a third. Lunchables, I think those were the worst inventions ever because they have very little nutritional value for our kids. You know, that bacon sausage pancake thing there, any of those type of things, again, it's all brown. You know, try to stay away from that. And a lot of our drinks too are very high in sugar. Taco salads, you know, you hear salad, you think it's healthy. That probably has more saturated fat than, I don't know what it was, like a bag of Oreos or something. It was incredible how much saturated fat that had. So some foods to avoid. sugar is probably at the top of my list. And why do I say that? Because, there's a lot of people that have a hard time with sugar. And I do. I like sweet stuff too, and it's one of those things that I really have to work at avoiding, because sugar creates inflammation in our body, and cancer cells love sugar. So taking sugar out of our diet is probably one of the biggest things we can do to improve our health. Hydrogenated fat, which is in most foods, if you look on their label and they have trans fats, you want to avoid that. Simple carbohydrates, again, like pancakes, biscuits, cakes, pies, even buns, hamburger buns. I mean, how much nutritional value do they have? None. So if I make a hamburger at home, I'll use those little sandwich tins, the whole wheat sandwich tins. They're about 40 calories. They look like little thin round things. And it gives you it replaces the bun, it's lower in calories, and it has some nutrition and some fiber too. Sugar drinks. When we look at Starbucks, maybe they're another reason obesity has gotten so bad, because most of your Starbucks and latte and those drinks have a ton of sugar, and the calorie count in some of them, 400 to 700 to even 1,000 calories in those drinks. And people just order them and don't think anything about how many calories they're actually drinking. So get online, Google, see what your favorite coffee drink contains, and you will be surprised how much sugar and how many calories. Smoothies and shakes. Now, I made a healthy smoothie, but there's a lot of times you go to a restaurant or a drive-in, and those smoothies are nothing more than, ice cream or sugared type syrups and maybe a little bit of fruit, but not much. So those are things to be aware of as well. And processed foods. Research shows that people drink about 40% of their calories daily. So that's something to be aware of, is how many calories are we drinking a day. And here's some different examples of how the effect of different foods on ourselves. So if we had a piece of chocolate cake, I think that's a chocolate mousse cake, we see a large spike in our blood glucose, and when that happens, we see a drop in energy. Our blood sugar does this, and it comes down. And when that insulin spikes, we see an increase in storage of our calories. And it's usually fat storage. It's filling up those fat cells, and then we become hungry and we crave more. And with that, we find we have low energy and we can't think, and we might be more irritable. And we have very few vitamins and minerals in that chocolate cake with raspberries. It's also really high in refined sugar and fat. Now, if we ate the salmon, the vegetables, and I think it's some type of grain, we'll see a small spike. And this is my goal for my family who's working on reducing weight and maintaining their insulin, is that if we can keep their blood sugar stable, we don't see those big spikes of glucose and then the responding insulin. So I make sure that they have protein for every meal and for every snack. And with that, you're going to see more energy, better mood, they can think, there's less insulin, less fat storage, less cravings, and they're higher in vitamins and minerals. And with the grains and the vegetables, you'll see some fiber and the higher quality fats. We'll talk a little bit about fats. Fats, and I put some different oils here, and we'll pass them around here too. But fats are an important part of our diet. Oftentimes, people will want to reduce fat because they think they're going to be reducing their weight, their calories, that type of thing, which fat provides 9 calories per gram, so it is more, but these fats are very important for our health as well. Not all fats are created equal. We talked about saturated fats and trans fats. Those are bad. These are our good fats, our healthy fats. It is essential for every cell in our body. It provides that satisfaction in our diet, our sense of fullness. It's also important because when you eat a bunch of carbohydrates, how quick are you hungry again? If I just go eat maybe some toast and jam, I'm usually hungry really quick, maybe in a couple hours. But if I have fats with that, I might not be hungry for 3, 4, 5 hours because it reduces the digestive processes and slows everything down. It's also important to carry those vitamins too. And diets too low, if you reduce your fat too low, you start to get those cravings, and most of those cravings are for what? Sugar. Sweet stuff. So the other night, for instance, I was craving ice cream. And so I thought, oh man, I really probably shouldn't have any ice cream. So I got out one of those Rye Crisps, and I took a little bit of this coconut oil and just spread it on and ate it. And I was like, wow, that was really satisfying. And I didn't have that craving for sugar anymore. I wasn't hungry. So those type of things are really easy to do and are much more healthy than giving in to those cravings. And also too much fat, though, is, again, linked to our obesity, diabetes, heart disease, and those things. Let's talk a little bit about the good fats. Here's our coconut oil. How many of you use coconut oil? Oh, good. Okay, I use coconut oil for higher heat cooking. And it might be like if I'm browning some chicken, or if I'm, one of the things I make is zucchini, and I'll bread it with some flax meal and some Italian breadcrumbs, and then fry it in this. And it is fabulous. Everybody says, wow, those are the best zucchinis I've ever had. But this is, it just provides a mild flavor, and it's good for high heat cooking. And it's nutritionally a better fat. People say, well, it's saturated. It is saturated, but it's a different molecular chain than, let's say, an animal fat that's saturated. Our omega, or our monosaturated fats has our omega-9s, and that would be our olive oil here. To remember which one was that. Here it is. And our olive oil, we should get about 10 to 15% of our calories from olive oil. And it's important, too, that you get the extra virgin because it's a better quality olive oil. And when it says light olive oil, basically, it's just light in color. It's not light in calories. And you might note when I pass this around to take a look at, on here, it'll give you total fat grams, and then it will tell you that there's 10 grams of monounsaturated fat and 1.5 of poly. And that's, most oils are never 100% anything. They're usually a mixture. But this is probably your most monounsaturated fat. Your polyunsaturated fat, your omega-3, which is your flax meal. I'll pass that around too. How many of you use flax meal in your cooking? Yay, couple, okay. I use this for several things, and I was telling you guys about a pancake recipe that I came across in this Glycemic Load cookbook. And again, it helps, the pancakes made out of flax meal, egg, protein powder, and it's like a highly grated apple, and with some seasonings and stuff like that. But flax meal is another good one. It has our good omegas, omega-3, good fiber. I think there's 4 grams of fiber and 2,400 milligrams of omega-3s. So this is something if you can add to your oatmeal in the morning, you can add it to your smoothies, you can put it on your zucchini, breads, muffins, any of those type of things is a good way of getting those healthy fats. Omega-6s, and these are your higher heat cooking oil. And I'll show you these. You'll notice at the bottom, it'll tell you what to use this for. So your olive oil is not something you want to use for your stir fry, because your olive oil actually should only be used on no heat to low heat. But your canola oil, the one that's made for high heat, or your almond oil are made for higher heat cooking. And these would be good examples of your omega-6s. Omega-6s in too much promotes inflammation. So you don't want to have too much omega-6s. You want to have more omega-3s. And a coconut, like I talked about, is your healthy saturated fat. Which I'll pass this one around. How many of you have used grapeseed before? A little bit. Grapeseed oil. This one's a high heat one too. Grapeseed oil is another one that's good for high heat. And let's do this section. It has mainly polyunsaturated, so I think it's an omega-6 as well. But remember, omega-3s is where we want to be because those decrease inflammation, omega-6 increase inflammation, And really, the only place we get our omega-3s is our fish oil and our flax. So that's why those two things are important to include on our diet. Bad fats. Corn oil. I remember this being in my mom's cupboard. The big thing of Mazola. And what we know now is that corn oil and soy oil are the two cheapest oils out there, and our processed foods contain a ton of them. And that's why we have so many omega-6s in our diet, is because all of the processed foods. But if you can avoid those two things as much as possible, it will help decrease the inflammation in your whole body. And I try not to ever use corn oil. Soybean is hard to avoid in our foods. If you look at the labels, a lot of your foods contain soybean oil. And saturated fats and animal products also promotes heart disease, diabetes, and cancer. We'll talk real quick about proteins here. Proteins are important in our diet. How many of you guys are really conscious about the proteins that you do eat, and that you make sure you eat some pretty much every meal? Protein, kind of, try. You know, and I have become much more conscious about it this year, and especially watching, thanks to my husband, his blood sugars and things like that, because protein is a building block of our body. And you know, when I was younger, I'll be honest, all I ate was carbs, because carbs were easy, they were quick, they were not very expensive. When I was single, probably the only protein I ate was yogurt and milk. I ate very little meat, but I know that I had a true protein deficiency, and part of my sleeping problems had to do with that, because protein is a building block of our body, our immune system, as well as our hormones. And if we don't have enough protein, we can't make serotonin in our brain to relax and sleep. So it's really important also for healing. And all of us have damage to our cells constantly, and we need to make sure we have enough protein to heal those cells. It also stabilizes our blood sugar and helps reduce our cravings like fat does. It also helps our brain power, our focus, our learning, our memory, and our mental alertness. And so what I try to do is have a protein for every meal and snack. So what are some different proteins that we could use for different snacks? Any thoughts to that?
Peanut butter?
Peanut butter? That's a good one.
Nuts.
Nuts? Yep, I eat a lot of almonds.
Unfortunately, I like cheese.
Cheese, yeah, I do too. You know, and a better choice of your cheese is more of your mozzarella cheese. It's a little bit less fat, but it's a good choice. You know, 6 different cheeses a day wouldn't be good, but 1 or 2 sticks of mozzarella is not bad. Any eggs? That's true.
Hard boiling.
Yep.
You can take them with you.
They're portable. Yeah.
Really nice.
Exactly. How about my quinoa? Yeah, that's a complete protein. So that one grain is a complete protein. Most of your grains you have to add, like beans and rice, that type of thing, in order to get all the essential amino acids. But your quinoa is a complete protein. Anything else?
Big steak.
Steak. Steak, fish. Yes. Any other? Yogurt is a protein. Milk is a protein. Cottage cheese, those dairy products. Anything else that I'm forgetting? There's a lot of protein powders out. The whey protein, those type of things are a good additional protein. But your protein consumption should include non-meat choices like we talked about: peanut butter, quinoa, nuts, those type. I know there's some more. But again, you can use beans and rice as a complete protein, but also increasing our consumption of chicken, fish, and all that. They say that red meat should be limited twice a week, and when we look at cancer and heart disease, that's important. It's tough. But you'll notice, if you look at the Target, Chris is a big proponent of wild game and fish and those type of things. So, if you are going to eat red meat, eat more of your wild game. And that, when we take a look at our meat supply, it is kind of scary, because a good portion of our meat comes from feedlots. And those feedlot grown beef are very high in those omega-6s that we talked about. They're very inflammatory fats. And they also have high antibiotic content because, why? These cows stand around in a little area like so, in a pen, and they contract all sorts of illnesses. So therefore, they're treated with all sorts of antibiotics and growth hormones, so they aren't there very long. So it's important that if we are going to eat our beef and those type of things, that we get them grass-fed, range-type beef. But most everybody needs, because our diet is just not very complete and our food supply isn't as good as it used to be, but we all need a whole food type vitamin. And there are vitamins that are made for men and women in different stages of life, for children, for athletes. So it's important that you find the type that is best for you. Fish oil, again, because you have to remember, this and our flaxseed, wherever that is the only two sources of omega-3s. And omega-3s are so important in our health. And our omega-6s, again, promote inflammation. So I suggest everybody should have a fish oil as well, whether you take it liquid or like the little fish in the capsules. Vitamin D. We all supplement with vitamin D. Again, I do that for my entire family. And if you go in to get your physical, get your vitamin D level checked. And what I have also seen in my research is that if you have a low vitamin D level, you also may tend to have a higher blood sugar level. There's a big association between low vitamin D and higher blood sugar or diabetes as well. Let's see. Calcium and magnesium, and that's really important, especially for women. But I think for all of our population, we're seeing higher and higher incident of osteoporosis. Vitamin C, if you're not eating your 5 to 7 fruits and vegetables a day, you probably also need a vitamin C supplement. And then many people need individual supplements based on their diseases, their bioindividuality, or deficiencies they might have. Let me think. For instance, if you have, and for me, I have some vision issues, and so I'm very conscious of taking my lutein as an additional supplement for my health. I've also have some other, I have some vascular issues with varicose veins, and so they put me on another one called, I can't even remember it at the moment. I take one from memory too, but obviously I haven't been taking that lately. So anyway, so there's different ones that you might need to take a look at, and I just, these guys are great experts here in the supplements and vitamins and minerals, and ask them, say, I'm this age, I'm doing this, what would you suggest for a supplement? But everybody in this area is deficient in vitamin D because we do not get enough from our food supply, and we obviously don't get enough from the sun. We've seen it, 2 days now in the year 2011. So it's really important, and even for our kids, because vitamin D, the deficiency in vitamin D is highly connected to MS, depression, colon cancer, diabetes, and osteoporosis. So when we look at the diseases versus a little extra vitamin D in our diet, it's really important that we do that. And I use a liquid one that I put in my smoothies every morning, so I know all my kids and everybody has enough vitamin D. And I know when I went and got my level tested, I think I was at a 62. And that was the highest level I've heard anybody say. And I'd been supplementing for about 1.5 years. So it's really important to do that. Okay, so our health strategies here. To make sure we incorporate high quality foods in every meal, our whole foods from the target. Reduce or eliminate those with very little nutritional value. Throw that hot hamburger bun away. Use your sandwich thins. Add lots of fruits and vegetables to it instead. Get rid of those sweet drinks. And try to eat 5 or 6 even small meals. If you have 3 main meals, then add in 2 snacks that you might consider a small meal. And make sure you have a little protein with those. Eat more from the interior of the target. Add protein. Read your labels. Remember, the fewer the ingredients on your label, the better. Like we said on the Triscuits, they have, I think, 3 ingredients. Your wheat thins have about 10 ingredients. So 3 ingredients is better than 10 ingredients, and if you can't pronounce them, avoid them. Make sure we drink enough water. We should drink about half our weight in ounces per day. So if we weighed about, that's 150 pounds, half of that is 75. That would be 75 ounces of water a day. And what we see is we are a very dehydrated population. And that's another reason we have a high incidence of cancer. High incidence of bladder cancer too, is we're not drinking enough water to keep our system hydrated. Take your supplements, and then just make nutrition and your health a top priority in your life. Take time to eat good foods, take time to cook, and to shop and to do that. You know, what I find most people's downfall is they're always in a hurry and they don't plan ahead. But if you plan ahead and cook ahead, it's a lot easier to make good, healthy choices. So, any questions? Comments? Concerns? And if you need, additional help, I'm available for, individual consultations if you have a health issue. I've worked with cardiac patients, osteoporosis patients, diabetes patients, or just weight loss, that type of thing. But making sure we have exercise, rest, rejuvenation, and proper nutrition in our life, and then we'll have that balance, energy, vitality that we need to live a great life, and not just kind of a survivor life. Yeah. Well, good. Well, thank you guys all for coming, and I actually didn't go over the time tonight.